Sixth grade, welcome to the second half of lesson 2 in science class today. I'm going to start with a quick review from the beginning of lesson 2. We were talking about how do scientists group organisms, and we started on page 10 and 11 where we were talking about how there's 6 different kingdoms based on similarities, and as they get more and more similar we break them down. And so across the bottom, page 10 and 11, we spent time yesterday saying, hey, kingdom to phylum to class to order to family to genus to species. Species from lesson 1 are the only organisms that can mate to produce offspring, which also have offspring that can continue on to the next generation. We talked a little bit yesterday about the 6 kingdoms. We got started on talking about the bacteria kingdom and how it's divided into archaeobacteria and eubacteria. Today we're going to continue on with those kingdoms and take out the next 2 kingdoms, which are protists and fungi. And then we'll talk a little bit about all 6, and then lesson 3 we'll get the last 2 plants and animal kingdoms. Remember the guy who gave it to us in the 1700s, Carolus Linnaeus, he only had 2 kingdoms because he could only use his eyeballs. He said, I see plants, I see animals, I didn't see anything else. Then when we developed the microscopes, then we started to find some of those, including bacteria, single-celled things that do not have a nucleus. Okay, let's move on today. You should be on page 12 in your science book with me. We're halfway down that page. You should have your fill in the blanks, which is what's on your screen right now, and I'll get going. It says there are more than 200,000 known species of protists. They're mostly one-celled organisms. So the first part of your number 1 is filled in. Some scientists think that this kingdom should be broken into smaller kingdoms. The cells of all protists contain a nucleus. Okay, so little information that one. Number 1, if you remember yesterday, we have bacteria. They're mainly one-celled. And so some of us might be thinking, why don't you just put all these little one-celled things together? Because bacteria do not have a nucleus, and protists do. So scientists looked at these one-celled things. As they started to study the cells, they said these 2 cells aren't similar at all. And so boom, they put them into different categories. Now into different kingdoms. Now we're going to talk about this protist kingdom. It's all one kingdom, and yet your science book right from the start said, hey, some people think they should be divided into more, and we'll talk about why. Paragraph number 2. Some protists are like animals. Number 2 on your notes. Why are they like animals? They get energy by eating other organisms. Now remember, guys, these are single-celled organisms, so I don't want you to picture baby tigers running around the size of 1 cell. So when we use the word eating, you and I go to what we see of humans eating, of animals eating. They're just consuming their food. They're not doing it with big, huge mouth and teeth, though, because they're single cells. An amoeba is an example. Plant-like protists contain chlorophyll, number 3 on your notes, that they use to make their own food during photosynthesis. Algae are plant-like protists. Some protists are like fungi, number 4 on your notes, because they grow in damp, nutrient-rich environments where they absorb food through their cell membranes. So if you go back to paragraph 1, guys, you can see why some people think there should be 3 different kingdoms. There should be animal-like protists, there should be plant-like protists, there should be fungi-like protists. Because they're single-celled, they're in the protist kingdom, but let's divide that kingdom into 3 other ones. Right now we don't. We keep protists all as one kingdom, but you can see why some scientists disagree with that depending on how they get their energy. So kingdom number 3 we've studied is protists. Kingdom number 4, continuing on. Fungi are mostly many-celled organisms that often grow in moist, dark places. You're number 6 right now. Many give off chemicals that break down the organisms on which they grow. In the process, fungi get the nutrients they need. In 2 types of fungi, mushrooms and molds, cells form thread-like strands called hyphae. The hyphae take in nutrients for the organism. Hyphae can form thick, large mats. One single mushroom in Oregon has a web of underground hyphae that spreads 2,200 acres. That's the size of 1,665 football fields. Yeast cells, another kind of fungus that you can see in the picture on the bottom left there, yeast cell, you see in the bottom picture, are not connected by hyphae. So as you were cruising through there, you have number 7, the mushrooms and mold, they have that hyphae. Yeast is another kind of fungus. They don't. So once again, guys, you kind of see a theme today of we have one kingdom, but there's debate on should we split it up into more kingdoms, depending on the different ways they're linked together. And yet most of the scientists today say, I know you can divide those things, but we'll just divide them into different phylum based on that. Let's keep it as one big kingdom as we work our way through that. So you can see that fungi get their food by breaking down, putting out chemicals. And so that's why mushrooms, guys, are not considered a plant. Plants have chlorophyll. They make their own energy. Mushrooms don't. Although sometimes you and I think of a mushroom as a plant because it grows like a plant, it has roots like a plant, but it doesn't make its own food. And so they put it into a different kingdom. Last paragraph. Many fungi look like plants and have cells similar to plants. So you have number 9 on your notes. But plant cells contain chlorophyll, which plants use as they make food. Fungi do not have chlorophyll. Instead, they take in nutrients from other organisms. So you're going to learn later on this year that most fungi are decomposers. They break down dead things. A lot of bacteria do the same things for us. God in His infinite wisdom said we got to make sure this planet gets rid of waste. So dead leaves that fall off the tree this time of year are going to eventually get consumed by the dirt, the bacteria in the dirt, and the fungi in the dirt. That'll return those nutrients back into the soil so that we have healthy soil. Page 13 is just going to give a quick review of our 6 kingdoms. Guys, we've only studied 4 of them. We'll get plants and animals tomorrow. But I'll go through it. You can see I have a note for each one. Archaeobacteria has been on Earth for billions of years. Remember, your science book teaches evolution. You do not believe that as a Christian, but we understand it's coming from our science book, and we'll be exposed to that as you go through your learning. Some can live in hot springs where water temperature can reach 110 degrees Celsius. Guys, that's beyond boiling. So that's like 240 degrees Fahrenheit. And so most living things can't survive that thing. This bacteria can. Why do scientists have to have that? They have to say life has always existed on this planet because they don't believe in creation. Archaeobacteria can grow in water that is 10 times saltier than seawater. So once again, supporting evolution. Second group, eubacteria can cause diseases. You and I usually hear the word bacteria, we don't think good thoughts, but many are helpful, guys. They make soil fertile and are necessary for making food such as yogurt and cheeses. Some bacteria make vitamins in the human body. We need bacteria all the time in our digestive system, guys. There's a lot of positives that come out of it, and your science book is going to stress, hey, yeah, we know there's bad, but there's also good. Protists. I kind of went too fast there, guys, so number 2 in your blanks there, they're helpful. Protists say this. Protists form much of the gas and oil we use today. Although some protists are harmful, most are helpful. Sounds a lot like bacteria. Many are food, your blank in your notes, for other organisms, including Earth's largest organisms, whales. That's the algae that you had in your notes. The plant-like protists from number 3 at the top, that's start of a food chain. So you think about every food chain in the ocean, guys, starts with algae and some little thing eating algae. Now there are whales that eat just algae, but algae gets consumed by shrimp, which gets consumed by other fish, okay, so that's why they talk about being an important link in the food chains. Number 4, fungi are used to make foods and medicines such as penicillin. Some fungi can cause human diseases, your blank to fill in, such as athlete's foot and ringworm. They also cause plant diseases called rust. And so fungi can be good, the first part, but they can also be harmful, the second part. And then the last 2, plants. Without plants, life on Earth would not exist, your notes. These trout lilies have roots, stems, and leaves, characteristics of all plants. Like all plants, they can trap the sun's energy to produce glucose. So what we're going to learn as we go into tomorrow's lesson and then continuing on into chapter 2 is how plants do so many things for us, including they produce food. They can take sun's energy and make their own food, which we call glucose, guys, and then you and I eat those plants, or we eat animals that eat those plants. So that's why you got that first sentence. Without plants, life on Earth would not exist. We would die. There's no source of food. You and I can't make our own. Last, animals. Animals get energy by eating other organisms or their remains. Your blank. Topi, such as this one, live in Africa. Like all organisms, the topi has special adaptations that make it able to find and eat the type of food it needs. So it goes back and gives you a little review of adaptations, the characteristics to be able to help them survive, and we will spend another lesson, pretty much a whole chapter coming up, pounding adaptations and the different types of adaptations into our head. So chapter 1, really broad and getting some knowledge out there that we will then use in further lessons. Okay, now that you're done with lesson 2, you will also have the assignment that goes with it. You didn't have any assignment yesterday because we were only halfway through the lesson. And remember that last one is extra credit. Blessings.